Hello. Welcome to Delta Tech's Exploring Sage 300 video series. In this video, we will be exploring the features in Sage 300's Fiscal Calendar. The Fiscal Calendar is shared by all the Sage 300 accounting modules that you use. The General Ledger module is especially dependent on it for allocating transactions to the relevant financial periods. Your company's fiscal calendar is automatically created when you enable common services in Sage 300. In the Fiscal Calendar screen, you can create a new fiscal year for your company, edit the start and end dates of fiscal periods to match the dates your company uses, lock fiscal periods for one or more modules to prevent accidental posting, unlock periods for one or more modules to allow posting to the periods, separately lock and unlock closing and adjusting periods for year-end processing. To launch the Fiscal Calendar in Sage 300, click on Common Services, then double-click on Fiscal Calendar. The currently selected fiscal year is shown at the top. This will default to the most recent year when you first open the Fiscal Calendar. You can select the year by using the navigation buttons to the left and right of the field, or click on the Finder to display a list of available fiscal years. To create a new fiscal year, click on the plus sign next to the Finder icon. This will populate the fields with information related to the new fiscal year. Check the year and fiscal period start and end dates. The start and end dates will correspond to your existing accounting periods in Sage 300. If you cannot see all the 12 fiscal periods, either maximize the window, or use the scroll bar at the bottom to move to the next columns. Remember to save the changes when you are ready. Selecting the active option allows posting for the fiscal year. Note that this option affects all modules. If you do not want transactions posted to this fiscal year, deselect this option. The adjustment period is the period to which you can post year-end journal adjustments. These include any audit adjustments that you may have to make. This option only affects the general ledger entries. Selecting this prevents any further adjusting journal entries for this fiscal year. The closing period is used for performing year-end closing entries. When you do a year-end in Sage 300, all income and expense accounts will be zeroed out and moved to retained earnings. The closing period is used to create the journal entries for this. As with adjustment period, this option only affects the general ledger. If you have completed the year-end procedures and started a new year in general ledger, you can lock the closing period to prevent accidental updates. The lock adjustment and lock closing periods are only necessary if the fiscal year is still active. If you set the fiscal year to inactive, it will also lock the adjustment and closing periods. The fiscal periods are displayed in a grid at the bottom of the screen. The start and end dates are shown in columns at the top of this grid, while the modules are shown in rows at the left. We cover the process of locking and unlocking fiscal periods in one of our Sage 300 video tutorials. Check in the description below for a link to that video. But, let's look at how to edit fiscal period starting and ending dates. To edit the start date, simply double-click in the cell just below the fiscal period header, along the start date row. A text box will appear. You can either key in the start date, or click on the icon at the right to display a calendar. It's the same for editing the end date. Click in the end date cell, enter the end date manually, or click on the calendar icon and select a date. When you enter an end date in the fiscal period field and leave it, Sage will automatically update the start date of the following period. Once you have completed editing the fiscal period dates, remember to save your changes. Avoid changing fiscal period start and end dates unless necessary. This feature is usually used when you first set up your company database. If you have already been using Sage Stage 300 and need to change fiscal period dates, it is best done after you close your financial year. Changing the fiscal period dates will have an impact on your financial reporting. Before changing fiscal period dates, ensure that all transactions have been posted and the relevant reports have been printed. If you must make changes, do a backup of your data first. This concludes our tour of Sage 300's Fiscal Calendar. Keep in mind, when using the Fiscal Calendar, you should be the only user accessing Sage 300. To learn about locking and unlocking fiscal periods, watch our video tutorial where we walk you through the process in detail.